Tonight, for everybody here, we've got a wonderful group of speakers to inform and entertain. For the next hour, we're going to hear from two investment specialists about investing with a focus on legacy. And then we're going to change tunes and talk about legacy in a broader sense. So I'm going to bring up on stage to begin our two investment people and a wonderful interviewer. The session's going to go for around about an hour, then afterwards we're going to spill out here and enjoy a beautiful view over an evening on Sydney Harbour with some drinks and something to eat. And we look forward to mixing and talking with everybody. So our first speaker tonight is Ian Macoun. Ian is the founder and managing director of Pinnacle Investments, which is a listed company, market capitalisation, changing a lot day by day, about $4.5 billion, Ian. And Ian has got a wonderful career in investing. He's one of the sought-after people in investment markets. Pinnacle is a multi-boutique asset manager which owns stakes in 18 affiliates. They're big names, and some of you will have investments with these, and certainly ought to, because Ian and his team select really the top tier of fund managers across multiple assets around the world. Ian's long career is something that we admire. We're delighted to have Ian to speak to us tonight. Our next speaker is Bobby Yazdani. Bobby's the founder and managing partner of Cota Capital, who are based in San Francisco. So he's come a bit further than Ian today to be here. And we got to know Bobby over the last couple of years and visited him in San Francisco, where we gained a great appreciation of Bobby and his team and the way they go about investing in cutting-edge technology. So Bobby was an early-stage investor in a number of the technology household names that you know today: Google, Uber, Dropbox, etc. And his career as an entrepreneur and founder, eventually floating his own company, and now managing venture capital with a direct focus on AI investments and frontier technology investing, gives him a unique insight, and us a unique insight into Silicon Valley, where he's regarded as one of the go-to people and somebody who's helped people's career in Silicon Valley and investing. So thank you for being with us today, Bobby. And to put that together and to interview these sorts of heavyweights, you need one of the best. And the guy who's going to come up and do that is David Koch. Koch is, of course, a household name in this country, 21 years host of Sunrise, the founder of AusBiz, which is Australia's business channel, ausbiz.com.au. You don't follow it, you should. There's great content about markets. And Koch, of course, has been in journalism and finance journalism for decades and is a renowned figure. He's also an AFL diehard and chairman of the Port Adelaide Football Club. We might hear a bit more about that when he's got our sportsman Mark Taylor up later. But I'm going to hand over to these three gentlemen who are going to entertain, inform, and let's hear about legacy. Thanks, guys.
All right, come on up, guys. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, everyone, for having us. Good to see so many familiar faces. Russell McKim. I started a magazine, you might remember, in the 80s called Personal Investment Magazine, the first retail investment magazine out of Melbourne. Russell McKim, I think you were in the first issue. It's a long time ago. And you've weathered well. So it's great to have everyone here. I love doing functions like this because it gives me a chance to, on your behalf, pick the brains of some of the experts and see what we can learn from them. And there is a lot to learn tonight. Now, a lot of big themes. We've got AI, we've got technology, we've got US, geopolitical, lots of themes to get through, which I certainly will. But these two blokes have built great careers, built great businesses from scratch. So let me kick off with Ian, to you first. When you look back over such a successful, and I can't use a past tense, ongoing success story, what have been the turning points for you? What have been the foundations when you look back that build success?
So the biggest turning point of all, David, was when I came to this realisation that I was in an industry that everyone thought was a fantastic industry, and I felt it was deeply flawed, really deeply flawed. So the funds management industry was dominated by institutions, you know, life companies, bank-owned, institutional fund managers. There were a few boutiques that started, and they were good people, but they were standalone boutiques, and they themselves had challenges. So it was a real crossroads for me. And I remember saying to my wife, I could stay in this business. It's fantastic. I'm ridiculously well paid, more than I'd ever expected. And it's not that hard, but I basically know that I'm a fraud. And, it's not on, and I can't live like this. And either we're going to do something much better, or I'll go and do something else.
Right, so you had to disrupt.
You had to disrupt in order to make it good enough. Right. Because the model that I felt was so much better didn't exist. So I was a public servant, a conservative person, and I had to become an entrepreneur in order to make our industry to the standard that I thought it needed to be.
Okay. So you personally, how did you change? How did you learn to do that, to disrupt the industry? Conservative, it's all about the leader.
Yeah. So it was huge, but I believed in it. Funds management is incredibly important. You're important to the lives of millions and millions of people. Our company's purpose or mission is enabling better lives through investment excellence. So here you're involved in something incredibly important that's not doing the sort of job that people expected it to be doing. We're all pinching each other's people, and it was unstable, and it just wasn't the sort of quality that it needed to be. So I had to change fundamentally. Some things didn't need to change. So I always set very high standards for myself. I had high expectations. I always said, if you can't be truly excellent at something, then get the hell out of it and leave it to people who can be. So it was the multi-boutique model that we came up with, because I love working with talented investment professionals, and they're the heart of everything that matters in investing. But in institutions, they were sort of somewhat downtrodden, that their interests were not looked after properly. So we had to set up a brand new model. So I'd always loved working with really talented people. I was in awe of these amazing investment people. So one way or another, I found that I could identify these people, and I could convince them to sign up on a mission to be excellent. So I had to become, so I was a sort of a chief executive of businesses, I had to become what we call a servant leader. I had to say to these people, our affiliates will be investment-led. So the investment professionals will be front and centre and the most important thing, and I'll build your services for you, but you'll be able to just focus on investing. Investing is really hard. You need to be focused entirely on investing to be really good at it. And we'll do everything else for you and make it easy. But had to become sort of a servant leader and just a mentor to people, no longer the boss.
Bobby, what about you in terms of building your businesses? You're in that fast-moving tech, Silicon Valley, venture capital area. Let's start with you. on what were the foundations for you building your success, and I'll extend that to people you've come across.
Okay. I think my journey somewhat different than yours. I came to America as an immigrant, and I arrived there in 1982 as a student, and I attended University of California in Berkeley. And my journey started by being an immigrant and overcoming being an immigrant. Being from Iran, arriving in America in the middle of hostage crisis was not the easiest part of my journey.
But if you had to go anywhere, California would be...
California was easier than Texas, I should say. But I did arrive at Berkeley, which is a very, I would say, forward place. And I was, I had to overcome to start with to be an immigrant and to be an American. So once I overcome that part of the journey, I was fortunate to show up at the right time, at the right place called Silicon Valley. And I am pretty good with mathematics. So I showed up with the right fortune of being a good mathematician at the right place at the right time. And the rest was history. So I started my journey working for a small company called Oracle in early days of Oracle. And I was there for 10 years. And I realized that America is the home to entrepreneurs. I worked for Larry Ellison for a number of years, who was I would say, one of the early leaders of entrepreneurship and technology.
What did you learn from him?
Resilience, having an independent mind, believe in your mission, believe in your goal. We went after IBM, and we took them on, and we took them out. That was not an easy journey in there. But then I decided that I want to be an entrepreneur. I decided America is the home of the entrepreneurs. I studied the history of entrepreneurship in America, and I wanted to be one of them. And they enabled me. That country and that culture gave me the permission and enabled me to be who I am today.
Yeah. So you studied American entrepreneurs. Any themes come through that on what makes a successful entrepreneur? And do you still apply that when you're trying to identify the new entrepreneurs that you invest in and support?
Yeah, there are actually characteristics of entrepreneurs. First of all, they are all underdogs. Nobody believes them. It's a pretty lonely place to be an entrepreneur. And you're an underdog. You're kind of actually an outsider most of the time. You just don't fit in. You don't fit in anywhere. And you find this isolated place with your own mind and your own desires. So you are an underdog. You are a isolated person. You don't fit. But you have a belief, and you see, or you have an insight. You see something other people don't see. And your belief that you're going to actualize what you see is what drives you. But you got to be resilient. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody.
You have to believe in that mission. That's what keeps you going and gets you through all the obstacles and all the naysayers. And as you say, there are plenty of people who will say that you're going to fail.
I have all the rejections letter. I kept all of them.
So how do you identify that lonely person with a great idea for you to invest in or support or mentor through? Give us, when explaining that, give us some examples.
As an investor, as a financier, a backer of an entrepreneur, very similar to your views of being at a service to someone. First of all, we are at a service to entrepreneurs. We exist because they exist. Our capital is nothing without them. We don't exist with those special people. What do we look for? First of all, we are a highly specialized investor in our own sector. We are engineers first before we are financiers. We understand technology deeply, and the people that in our zip code or in our postcode, you call it, that we operate, they are also highly specialized people. So the pedigree and their depth of understanding and their insight has to be authentic. It has to be forward and authentic. And they have to have this, they have come to a realization that other people don't see. And we try to go to the source of that. How did you come to this realization? And examine that and believe that it is authentically that person who has identified it. So
that's hard to differentiate someone who can deliver as well, rather than being a sham and a scammer, with big ideas, and it turns into a Ponzi scheme. So
You can figure them out fairly quickly.
Yeah, you can.
once you really talk to them.
You can figure them out pretty.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. In my world and your world, our work requires specialized knowledge.
Right.
We're not dealing with consumers here.
Right. Yep. So give me an example of one person that you identified really early, an entrepreneur, and backed them, and why. Did you identify Elon Musk early? And
No, I
back him
didn't
up?
have the fortune of meeting him.
Right.
So you have to be a fortunate person to meet these people.
Right.
You got to be lucky to see them and find them. I'll give you one example. I mean, all of you have an iPhone or a mobile phone. In 2007, two young engineers who had dropped out of MIT showed up in my office and through a friend, he said, we'd like you to show you something we have solved. They didn't start by showing me what they have built. They started showing me the problem I have. And the problem was very simple. I had a phone in my hand, and they had a phone, and I couldn't share a file with them, an actual file. Those days, there was no such a thing as cloud. You, right now, all of you are on the cloud, and you're on Zoom sessions, and all these wonderful things you benefit from. It didn't exist. The company was Dropbox. Dropbox founders showed up, and they showed me how they can actually share a very large file between your phone and my phone using a cloud infrastructure. It was a very simple idea. It turned out to become a big idea, where you today, I'm sure many of you have benefit from cloud infrastructure. I'm sure your business benefits from cloud and many other businesses. So this is an example, but I did give them the benefit of the doubt, and I was a very good listener. I didn't judge them too fast.
Right. And do you invest small and then grow with the investment in organisations like that? Do you say, okay, I reckon you're ridgy-dig here, but I'll put a bid in and see if you deliver? Or do you go in boots and all?
No, my world is so competitive. It doesn't work that way anymore. The minimum check size for me is a $6 to $10 million check. And the person that I back is a very special person with a very specialized knowledge. So I don't worry about those type of things anymore. My world has changed.
Okay. Mind you, you've got to have a big critical mass of funds that $10 million is probably the equivalent of $100 to us with the size of our fund. Let's get into some of the big themes. Ian, how worried are you about this new American administration and the impact on investing and all our wealth?
Obviously, it brings a lot of uncertainty because you talk about disruption. We've got a disruptor as the US president, big
He's
time.
an entrepreneur.
He's a big time.
What about Bobby's entrepreneur?
That's right, and I understand that when you're running a company, but when you're running a country, it's a bit different. So there's massive uncertainty. The things that he's said he's going to do will bring massive change, and we're not really able to anticipate all the effects of that. But the question is not what he says he's going to do, but then he actually does, and that's what we don't know yet. So let's wait and see. It's not all bad. Some of the things that he's looking to do will be good for economic growth and so on, but tariffs do worry me, and a reduction of trade. We've had a wonderful period of at least 15 years after the GFC until just over 3 years ago, where we had deflation and we had this amazing environment where the slightest hint of any economic or social issues, central banks could stimulate. And that was a fantastic position, and it made for great prosperity and a long period of growth. That's gone now already, and on top of that, we've got this sort of threat that we'll have a big increase in tariffs and reduction in trade. That is likely to be inflationary and will be a negative for economic growth. So you've got sort of double whammy that are both bad. But I'm not that pessimistic. I think he does have some smart economic advice around him. I think the Treasury Secretary is a smart guy, and I think as he goes along, he'll figure out what's causing problems that are too big, and there'll be adjustments. But I don't really know. But he's going to reduce bureaucracy. He's going to reduce the size of government, and it's pro-business, it's pro-tech, which is all good. I think tech is going to be the source of massive productivity improvements, and that is great because that will mean lower inflation.
Because one end is that he's a fascist and is reminding us all what happened in the 30s. That's the really dark end of the thinking on this. And then the optimistic is that the American finances are broken. You do need a disruptor. You do need a chainsaw to come in and just upset the whole model so that they can bring their deficits back into line, these horrendous debt figures and all that sort of stuff, that it needs someone with the guts to do it and needs an entrepreneur to break the sacred cows.
So we don't know yet. So what do you think, Bobby?
Where are you, Bobby?
Closer to it.
Where are you between those two?
I like how he started. He asked him the question, what are you worried about? So he's already indicating he has to worry about something.
Markets hate uncertainty, don't they?
I'm not about interviewing you. Actually, I'm not worried. So I am not worried at all. So I give you a different lens, a different set of lens. We have a country that's producing $30 trillion of economy. This is United States economy, $30 trillion. We are growing at 2 to 2.5%. That's about 650 billion a year, and your economy is about 1 trillion. We are going to be compounding $1 trillion if we just increase the growth rate to 3 to 3.5%. So you're looking at a country that's going to put up $1 trillion of economy every year, equal to the entire economy of Australia. And we only have 350 million people putting up that number. So our crew, my team, is putting up that kind of an economy. And there are two ways to look at it. Either I got to drive the top line, revenue, or I got to worry about the bottom line, the cost of running it, which is the government cost. And the third one, I got to manage risk. That's the job of a CEO. Top line, bottom line, risk. Our risk is China, nobody else. We don't worry about the rest of them. Our top line, we have to unleash it because we can do more and we can drive. We are capitalists. We are capitalists at the end of the day. And we want to drive the top line.
Look, I think we're all huge admirers of the US in terms of its innovation, entrepreneurial drive, and productivity improvement and so on. There's no doubt about that.
So what's the punchline here? What are you worried about?
I think tariffs and trade policy.
I tell you what the tariff issue is. If you live in the United States, you have a very different lens around tariff. Mm-hmm. So in the past 4 years, you have to drive an hour and a half across the Mexican border. You will start seeing the signs are changing to Chinese. We have more Chinese factories have been set up in northern part of Mexico and shifted the manufacturing from China to Mexico. And there are more things being shipped to Canada that's coming across the border on those lorries. So the view of where we sit is very different. It's not as simple that, hey, these guys are just putting some tariff. The tariff is a political statement. It's not an economic statement. It's intended to say, we know what's going on. We know actually really what's going on. These are Chinese manufacturing that's been installed across the border. That's one challenge. The second piece is that our population is being addicted by cheap drugs, actually really cheap drugs. And the gangs are systematically polluting communities after communities after communities, and through our children and young people by bringing very inexpensive synthetic drug to the communities. And that's war. If you do this to my kids, I'll pick up a fight. I hope you do the same. People have to have a stand of what is right and what is wrong. So in their world, the president of Mexico, 30 seconds on it, she's brilliant, by the way. She is absolutely brilliant. She said, and Trump asked him, he said, you have all these drugs come to our country through Mexico. What is going on with Mexicans? How come they're not addicts? He said, we are not consumers. But why are you not a consumer? Well, because we have families and we have churches and we have advertising that shows what do you do to yourself when you become an addict. So they are an exporter, and they're okay with it because they're not a consumer themselves of it. So that statement was, she gave it away.
I'm not sure she exactly said that, but so is every undocumented Mexican a drug cartel operator or a rapist or a criminal, and you've got to get rid of 12 million of them?
Well, how do you come up with that?
Well, I'm quoting Trump.
What do you mean 12 million people?
I'm quoting him. But anyhow.
No.
Okay.
If somebody comes to your country illegally, you don't have a problem with that?
Yeah, we do, but...
Then don't treat us differently.
Okay. That's a fairly... They do pay tax, and like I have relatives over there that...
That illegally came to the United States and they pay taxes?
that employ them and had social security numbers and they pay tax. And
because the government was incompetent managing that process.
All right. So you're very optimistic about Trump.
I didn't say that. You did.
Well, I think it was bleeding obvious.
No, I'm talking about what I believe.
A lot of the same
I'm not talking about Trump. I'm talking about what I believe.
Right. Okay.
I'm not here representing Trump. He can represent himself.
All right. Let's talk about the other big issue is AI. Bobby, put that in perspective. How transformative. Ian was saying just the technology entrepreneurship of the United States is extraordinary. Has been leading the world for decades. Put AI in perspective for us. Is it going, we all remember the first personal computer that came out, IBM, I think. Apple did the first one, then IBM came out, and it was going to change the world, and it did. Is AI that on steroids?
big question. I need to take a little bit of time to put some marks first, then I talk about AI. So in technology, we have cyclicality in innovation. There are cycles of innovation. And every time a new cycle starts, it's built on the previous cycle. Without personal computers, you wouldn't have connectivity between computers. If you wouldn't have connectivity between computers, you wouldn't have internet. If we wouldn't have internet, that wouldn't force us that your mobile phones had to be connected to internet. And your financial services and your banks would have not been on your mobile phone, and the list goes on. So we have experienced over the past 40 years multiple of these super cycles of technology. Till 2000, I would say, 20, we were in the information age. That ended. You are now entering a period that I refer to as cognitive age. So the information age is finished. Because information is at parity. You're not going to get any better information than I do because it's at availability to everyone at the same time. So it does not going to give you a competitive advantage having information access. That's over. And all of the previous super cycle was to free the information and make it available to everyone. And internet was the beginning of it, and your mobile phone is not a consumption of the information that you have. The super cycle that we are in right now, the cognitive period, is the period of not information, is the period of insights. So when my children ask me, how much of the chat GTP should I use for my work? I said, shamelessly use it. Because the humanity has changed. The way it learns is not through accumulation of information. It's about finding insights. And I'm going to use shamelessly all the tools that I can get my hands on to give me insights. And AI is an example of that and such a tool. So we are in the beginning of a super cycle. It's going to profoundly change all of our experiences like your mobile phone did. Your mobile phone is going to turn into your AI agent, who's going to be an extension of you. Your experience. We would not use search in 5 years. You would never go to Google to do a search anymore. That is over.
So you're saying dump your Google, your Alphabet shares. So let me...
I didn't say that again.
No.
Because Google is actually a cold
I'm asking
holding
you a
of
question.
me. No, because it's a cold holding of me, and I own it. And I own it from day one when I invested in it.
Right.
Because I believe Google is going to be a frontier in AI.
Right.
It's an understated player, but it's going to be a frontier in AI.
They're spending a lot of money on AI.
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
Ian, how do you position the funds to take advantage of this for clients?
So AI is going to be huge in funds management. I mean, I think it's going to be huge in just about everything. And we can't, Bobby can, but we can't really envision and understand all the forms that's going to take. And I like to have an analogy of the internet. Remember when the internet first appeared and we could sort of see that it could do certain things, but we didn't really understand the power of it and what was going to be able to be done with it commercially. And then came Amazon and like all manner of things, and now it's used for everything. I think AI is going to be like that, but I don't yet know the actual form that it's... I'm not smart enough to understand all this. But I do know one thing, and we've talked a little bit about legacy. Clearly I'm getting closer to retirement. One of the things that I'm going to leave as my legacy is making certain that every Pinnacle affiliate and Pinnacle itself is ahead of the game on using AI. So we're doing it already. So we've got a couple of, for us, large teams, a tech team and a data team in Pinnacle, and we've got AI people throughout all of our affiliates. And at the moment, I'd say they're doing a lot of experimenting. It's early days. There's all this amazing data out there and these new tools, but we don't quite know how we're going to use it. So it's going to be a journey of discovery. But it's really two things for funds management. One is obviously improving efficiency, taking out cost. I think we're going to see massive cost reduction in all the fund admin and custody and all those sort of. That's great. That's really good for investors.
Fees coming down.
Absolutely. Hey, Kochi, newsflash, they've been coming down for quite a while. But yes, it will be better value for investors. But the really big thing is investment insights. And I found it very interesting that Bobby used the word insight, because that's what you're looking for always in doing good investing. I mean, I think investing has always been the same. It's always been gathering information, analysing it, and drawing insights from that to make good stock selections and portfolio decisions. Back in the day, Peter Lynch, the great Peter Lynch, used to wander all around the US looking at what was happening in shops and so on. He was gathering information, then he analysed it sort of manually and drew insights. These days, the availability of data is massive, the computing power, the ability to analyse it. But human beings mostly draw the insights. The question is, and I always believe we'll need extremely talented, sort of these rare, brilliant investment people who will always have insights, but they're going to have more and more tools available to them. Bobby's probably going to tell me they're going to be replaced by computers.
I'm just going to ask Bobby, can you advise Ian, as a fund manager, where he should be investing to take advantage of AI? Because most fund managers go, data centres. That's the way to go. Now, the boss of Microsoft is quoted recently saying maybe we're overdoing data centres at the moment. So
huge amounts of capital going into that part of things.
Massive. So if you're a fund manager, if you were Ian, Bobby, where would you be investing in to take advantage
the users
of AI?
of it? Are you going to
I think the first thing I think Ian said is right on. The first investment I make is my own people. And the fact that you are enabling your people and you're investing in your people to have the best tools, it's going to force them to have a different approach to making decisions and gaining insights. Yeah. We have more tools than ever before to gain insights. And hence it's going to up-level their game. They have to go higher up to compete.
They'll go out of business if they don't.
Yeah. No, but in terms of the investments, on one end of let's say there is a spectrum of risk and there's a spectrum of reward. Depends where you want to be on that spectrum. Do you are willing to take the highest risk, or you want to have the safest, essentially, outcome? So it varies.
Ian?
What do you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
Well, we want to be competitive. We want to be better than the others, and we're going to need those tools to be able to do it.
In terms of investments, what do you want to do?
So we don't know for sure yet, but what we want to know who are going to be the users, whose businesses are going to be improved enormously from using AI, and we're still trying to figure that out, and we'd like to think we'll be one of them.
So you're looking at the consumption, who's going to consume AI the most, who's going to benefit the most from AI. Yeah. So I am on the other side of it, where I'm investing in companies who are enabling people to consume AI and the technologies.
Yeah.
So here's how I would offer my thoughts. First of all, for my family, in my family office, I have a spectrum of investments. I have investments on the liquid side, I have investment in the growth side, and I have investment in the innovation side. Different risk profile, different return profile, and I like to be a portfolio of all of those things. So I do put Google on one end, and I'm going to go invest in autonomous vehicle on the other end, where I don't see any of those vehicles here in Sydney. Just come to San Francisco. You can't miss them. They're everywhere.
Absolutely. Great insights. I always get too carried away when
people are giving me a wind up. So,
when I interview. Jeremy's got the big hook out. So would you thank Bobby and Ian for great insights?
Thanks, Kochi. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
So I want to talk about on what drives culture, what drives legacy, passing on cultures to various generations. But for the cricket nuts, let's get all of the cricket stuff out of the way with rapid fire. Best Australian cricketer you've ever seen, Mark Taylor?
Do I leave myself out of that?
Yes, you've got to leave yourself.
Yeah, okay.
Leave yourself out.
Best Australian cricketer I've seen. Oh, God, that's tough. Greg Chappell, Ricky Ponting, Mark Waugh, Shane Warne. That'd probably be my four, I think.
What was it like? This is a question from my cricket nut grandson. What was it like calling Warnie's 700th wicket? You did it.
Yeah.
No bigger moment in sport.
I'm sometimes the arsiest bastard going around, Kochi. I fell into a couple of really good moments in Australian cricket as a commentator. Peter Siddle's hat-trick and Shane Warne's 700th wicket. I was at the MCG that day, 95,000 people, sold out, Australia v England. Australia up 3-0 in the series. The Ashes are at home, and everyone knows that Warnie's given it away after Melbourne and Sydney. So they know they're coming out to watch Warnie, and he's on 699 wickets. Well, the head of sport at Channel 9 at the time said, right, Bill Laurie, you're commentating until Warnie gets his 700th. So Bill did something like an hour and a half in the chair as the lead caller. And at that stage, I was number 2 behind Bill. And they said, Tubby, just be ready when Warnie gets his 700th. Well, then give Bill a break and you'll be in. I said, OK. Well, this said to about half an hour before lunch on day one. And Bill was at the MCC luncheon. He'd been invited by the MCC to the lunch. And he loves going there, even though he doesn't drink. But Bill, in his way, always wanted to go to the MCC lunch. So it gets to about 25 to 20 to 1. And eventually he says, I've got to go. And so the head of sports says, right, Mark, you're in. In you go. So I take over. Mate, you wouldn't believe it. Within about 2 overs, Warnie bowls to Andrew Strauss and bowls him through the gap.
So you didn't have time, because you didn't think you were calling it, to plan what you would say. Like you talked to Bruce McAvaney and like Kathy Freeman's iconic 400, if she won, he had the words, what a champion, all that sort of special. You had no chance to say that.
No, and same with Peter Siddle's hat-trick. I never planned any of my commentary.
Wow.
And I said, and not the first person to ask me that about. I think I am. I'm no doubt I'm a bit of a cricket tragic. I think I know the game. Most listening to the two lads here before, that you've got to know your game. That's what you've got to know. And I think I know more than most about cricket, about how it works. So I think that's in me. So as a commentator, I never wanted to write anything down and say, when Shane Warne gets his 700, this is what I'm going to say, because
it will go around the world.
Yeah,
those words.
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't sound real at times. Like Bruce McAvaney's call of Freeman's 400.
Yep.
Outstanding. No doubt about it. But Bruce is a professional. And yes, he could get it in his head, write it down, but also live it as well. And that's what people want with commentary. They want you to live it. They want you to be enjoying it as much as they are watching on the television. When Peter Siddle got his hat-trick at the Brisbane, at the Gabba, I was on, he got, I think, Chris Broad and someone else out. And then Warnie, the bloody idiot, sit next to me. And Warnie sort of says to me, come on, Tubby, get ready. He's going to get a hat-trick. And Warnie is a very proud Victorian. Peter Siddle is a Victorian. He was hoping he would get a hat-trick. Well, so I'm thinking it's not going to happen. But I'm having a laugh with Shane, and that's how. And then all of a sudden, bang, he hits Broad on the foot. And I think, I just instinctively, I said, that's got to be close. And he's given him. He's out. And Peter Siddle's got a hat-trick on his birthday. That just came to me because we were talking about him early in the day. It was his 26th birthday. So it just came into my head. So out it came. A good thing I didn't say F this and that might have got me sacked. But it just came to me. So, and I think people got from that call that I was enjoying commentating almost as much as Peter Siddle was enjoying getting a hat-trick. And I think that's the essence of commentary.
Yep. All right, the opposition player you most admire?
Wow. Opposition player. I didn't admire most of them, to be totally honest. Look, I always liked a player, a really good quality player, but who, it was a bit more humble than most, I think. I was thinking about, people talked about legacy and that here, the people who I looked back on in my young days as the people that inspired me to watch. And the first name that came to mind to me was Jack Nicklaus. And a lot of people in this room will know Jack, the Golden Bear. I was a young kid watching Jack Nicklaus play. And Jack won everything, 18 majors, even Tiger, I think he's got 15 now, Tiger. Jack, 18 majors. Just something about it, I wanted him to win because he was a player and he had the flair and the ability, but also he had a certain humbleness about him, which I really liked. I've got to say I'm not a huge Tiger Woods fan, but I was and still am a big Jack Nicklaus fan because just the way he played the game. And they're the sort of people I like, and I play against them, and I'm trying to think of a few, but when you play against them it's a bit different. But you don't mind seeing someone score runs, provided they're not a pain in the arse, if that's the way I put it.
Yep. So do you model yourself and your ability to lead an Australian cricket team on people like Jack Nicklaus? You've got to be humble, respect, because unlike football, where the coach is the boss, in cricket, the captain takes the responsibility of not only leading the team, but basically the coach as well.
Yeah.
You're the most important person in the organisation.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about it. That's what I loved about captaincy of a cricket side. You do actually run the side.
Yep.
When I came into the Australian cricket side in the late 80s and then took over the captaincy in 94 from Alan Border, Bob Simpson was still the coach, selector, just about everything. Sports psychologist. In those days, we didn't have the 15 people running around. We had about 2 or 3. My first chat with Bob was that I wanted to be more of a hands-on captain than Alan. Alan was a terrific player, better player than me. But Alan was a sit-back captain. He was very much, I'll play a certain way and I just want you guys to follow me, which works well, provided you're that sort of player, that you are tough, resilient, gifted, as AB was. If you're not quite that sort of person, I don't think some people would relate to Alan. I was more of a talker, but also a listener. So I said to Bob, I'm going to take more of it. And he was actually very good. He said, I understand that. So I wanted to take over a little bit because as a captain of a cricket team, you are the coach. You are the one out there in the field. You're changing the bowling. You're setting the field. You're setting the tone. So if you don't have that connection with the players you're playing with, I don't think you're going to be a good captain.
How do you build culture then? You're the captain, the coach, so you're a teammate and a coach. So you can't be the bad guy. You can't go, oh, that bastard who's a coach and play the good and the bad cop. You've got to be both. How did you build culture and how did you change, or did you change the team to reinforce that?
I think I opened the team up a little bit because I did speak more in the change rooms, at team meetings, and I also encouraged my players to speak more. I wanted to hear from them about what they saw. I hoped that what they saw was the same thing that I saw, but give them, open up the cricket side. How do you make culture? I think, you've got to lead a bit by example. There's no doubt about that, but that's not your full-time job, because if that's the only way you can captain the side, then I think you can run into trouble. And I saw this with Ricky Ponting in his captaincy career. As I said a moment ago in your first question, he's probably as good a player we've had this century, particularly as a batsman. But Ricky wasn't a great captain. I think because Ricky felt he had to do it all. Ricky felt, I'll just lead by example and you will follow. And that works well until Ricky doesn't play well. And towards the end of his career, he wasn't playing well. And sure enough, the whole side went like that. I had a terrible year in 1997 as a player. Terrible years, talk about me being dropped and all sorts of stuff. But in that year, we still won the Ashes. We beat South Africa and we won in Pakistan later that year. Even though I wasn't...
These are hard to please, weren't they? You're right.
Yeah, but my record personally wasn't great. So that's what you've got to be as a captain. You've got to be you've got to have your own individual output, if that's the right way of putting it. But you've also got to have your team realising that you're just one of the 11 also. So you're going to have your bad time as well.
How did you enforce the culture on a teammate?
On a teammate, a couple of times I had events where I thought players let themselves down, let the team culture down, but I handled that privately. And I think that's the only way to handle it. Couple of games, and people should probably done more research at the time, but a couple of times senior players or players that should have played in one-day games didn't because of events that happened away from the game. And I just called them in and said, we can't have that, even though we are mates, you're not playing tomorrow.
So,
and we found
you'd suspend them, you'd drop them and say they've got a bit of hamstring soreness or something like that.
So we decided to leave them out.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, and they knew it, and the team knew it, but no one else knew it.
Yeah.
And it's probably a little bit harder these days because the media and social media these days is so thick and fast that it's very hard to do that. But I don't like hearing or seeing any sporting side put up a blackboard or a whiteboard and saying, righto, here's how we're going to do culture, and writing it down, because I think it's really hard to write down. Yeah. It's something that it's bred. It's bred by communication. It's bred by, living your life the way that you say you're going to leave it, and hopefully people will then say, okay, that's the way Tubby does it, that's the way we're going to do it, that's the way we're going to play.
Huge responsibility, pretty lonely responsibility. Who did you use as a sounding board? Who did you go and
first and foremost, my father. He was one who taught me to play the game 100 years ago in Wagga Wagga.
Gee, aren't you fortunate that your father's your hero and a sounding board?
Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Another guy who Hookie knows very well, a guy named Neil Marks. When I came to Sydney from Wagga, I was 14 years old. I ended up at Northern District Cricket Club, where Hookie's the president of the club. And he just said to me, right, you've got to play at this club, this is how we play. I turned up to Asquith Oval in about my second game of third grade cricket, and Neil was the captain. And Neil would have been, I don't know. I'm saying late 40s. He'd come back in because we'd had a guy pull out. He just fitted in, so it would save moving people around the grades. Well, my sister was going for L's or a P's, so she had to drive from Epping to Asquith. Yeah, and it took us 45 bloody minutes. It took forever. So slow. She stopped at every lights. Drove at about 35k an hour. I get there 10 minutes before the start of play, and I'm fuming because I'm playing one of my first games for the club. Well, Neil Marks just grabbed me, took me aside. He said, if you think you're going to turn up here 10 minutes before the start of play, you find another club.
And you're doing the right thing.
And I'm thinking, wow, that's, and I'll never forget that. I'm telling that story. That I was 16 years old. Right. And I'll never forget that. And I said, right. And I was so shitty. And when my mother came along to pick me up and my father came along to pick me up, I told him the story. I said, I don't want to ever travel with my bloody sister again. and I just remembered it. I thought, okay, that's not right.
Yeah.
You get there, in those days, half an hour before the start of play. I was 20 minutes late. Right. And Harpo Neil Mark said, that's not how we play at NDs.
So, remarkable career, position, captain, coach. When did you realise it was time to go? And how did you prepare your legacy for Australian cricket into the future?
Look, I think a couple of years before I retired, I was 32 and had that bad year. Got through it, then had a very good year in 1998. But as I was having that year and I got myself as fit as I'd probably been in my life, I can feel that I was losing the desire to do it over and over again. And with the nickname of Tubby, I wasn't very keen on the gym, and that was becoming more and more prevalent in the game, which really worried me. I think one of the last times I made 100 for Australia, I had to do an ice bath. I had to give a urine sample, give blood, and then they told me I wasn't allowed to have a beer for 45 minutes after the game. And I said, right, I've stood in that stupid tank of ice, I've given me blood, I've peed in a bottle, I'm having a beer, anyone else want one? I had 12 blokes go, yes please, right? So I said, I'm not doing that. So I knew that my time was running out. But I think I'd already started planning for my legacy, or what I wanted to do anyway.
Did you identify your successor? Did you put the...
Well, we had a few.
Carry on.
We had a few, I think. And same with Alan. I took over from Alan. There was Stephen and Mark Waugh in the side. Ian Healy was in the side. David Boom was in the side. When I took over, Steve Waugh took over from me. Mark Waugh was still there. Warnie was there. So there was leaders coming through, no doubt about that. And for me, I had other options. Said Nine had approached me to do some commentary. In 1998, I did a 4-hour program, which was called Wide World of Sports in those days, live television. That was my introduction to telly. They said, what do you know about auto cue? I said, what's that? So that's how I learnt to do a little bit of telly back in 1997. So as you know, that's how they did it. They threw you in and see how you went. So I thought that I'd give that a go for a year or two. And then I got approached by an air conditioning mob and they said, do you want to sell a couple of air conditioners? I said, sure. 27 years later, they still want me to sell some. So I've been very lucky that I've made some good decisions at the right time and just stuck with them.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's all luck. But, you think about it through, you plan it. Of all you've done, what are you proudest of?
Oh, look, I think it's a bit cliched, but I think family, first and foremost. My kids are great. It's just nice to have great kids. I think they're respectful, they're humble, they work hard. I've got a primary school teacher, I've got a sports producer at Nine, and I've got a guy, my eldest son's doing a PhD in philosophy. Whoa. So I've got a cross-section. And yet, first and foremost, though, they're just great kids. And I enjoy 32, 30 and 25, and I just enjoy spending time with them, and they enjoy spending time with me. And that's, I think, the greatest thing you can do in life.
And how important was family when you were going through the tough times?
Well, I suppose they're the ones they cop the highs and the lows, the real highs and lows. That bad year I had in 97, I really was struggling to make runs, even though everything was fine at home. Everyone thought my eyes were gone, or I was having a bust up with my wife, or something happened. And no, I didn't have any excuses. I just couldn't bat. Just couldn't make any bloody runs. My William, and this is probably why, this is where the philosophy came into it. He came to me, or he sent me a text, or sorry, it wasn't a text, a fax. Remember a fax machine? Well, I'm still invested in them. They're not going anywhere. I got a fax from him in South Africa at the start of the tour because I was struggling, and there was a lot of talk about me, my position in the side, and he said, Dad, good luck tomorrow. A bit of a scribble, I think it was about 6 or 7. Dad, good luck tomorrow, score me 100. Well, by about game or 3 or 4 in, it was like, Dad, good luck tomorrow, can you score me 20? It came through in the So I knew life wasn't going too well. So at the end of after one day, I rang him one day and he said, Dad, how'd you go last night? I said, mate, we won. first one day against South Africa. He said, no, how'd you go? And I said, oh, mate, I got 16, which actually wasn't bad for me that year. I was playing badly. And he straight away, he said, how did Mark Waugh go? I was opening the batting with Mark Waugh. He goes, I said, Mark Waugh got 120 and man of the match. He said, Dad, can he share some of his runs with you?
And that was the start of a PhD in philosophy. That's not going bad, is it? Would you thank Mark Taylor for some extraordinary insights?
And would you thank Koch, everybody? Would you thank Koch, everybody? Thanks so much.